Hey everybody, it's Natalie McKenzie with The Whole Woman, and it's 6 o'clock here on the East Coast, which means it's Quaran-Tea time. That's right, I said teeny, so grab your martini, call a friend, throw up some hearts, and make some noise. Help me welcome today's guest, attorney at law, Karolina Dehnhard. This tenacious woman has the ability to connect, a desire to help people, and the experience of having been a divorcee and an attorney led to the creation of Divorce Dynasty. Yep, I said it, the dreaded D word, divorce. But listen, stay tuned. There's so much to learn. Make some noise, throw up some hearts, and help me welcome Karolina Dehnhard.
Hi, Natalie.
Hey, cheers. Welcome.
So happy to be here. I'm going to take a sip. It's bad luck to not take a sip.
Right. Mm.
Oh, this is so exciting.
This is awesome. Finally, we get to do something together. We have been trying to make it happen for a few years.
Yeah. And I love the intro because I know that for a very long time since you met me, I know that you knew that I do important work and I help women during divorce, but it is a negative word, divorce, death, and I'm so happy today that I could be here with you so we could talk about really what that platform is all about and why it exists, and certainly more than divorce.
But Karolina, before we talk about the platform and why it exists, I want to talk about who you are, because I think that is critical to us understanding how we got to Divorce Dynasty and how it was created. So tell us a little bit about your story, because we do have something in common.
Yeah. So I don't remember, it was July 21st, 1981, but somewhere around that time, the day that Princess Diana was getting married, my mother and I were on a flight, Pan Am, which was an airline back in the day, right? Flying here from Poland. My mother just went through her own horrible divorce in Poland, and she figured that the furthest she could get would be America. Let's leave our life in Poland. Let's start fresh on a whole new continent. No money, no English language, no family, nothing. She said, we're going to do it. And I remember sitting on that flight and my mother just telling me, there's a princess on the screen. I'm taking you to a country of promise. You're going to succeed. You're going to get an education. You're going to have a voice, and you're going to have a beautiful life. And I was a tiny little girl. I remember it like it was yesterday. Our first days was spent in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and it's not what it is today. We lived in a horrible apartment. I remember rats floating in the toilet bowl. I remember roaches walking around. I remember my mother being in a horrible relationship that led to domestic violence. Luckily, my mother never gave up. Always told me to smile, always told me to have a strong upper lip, always told me things would be okay. My mom ended up marrying my stepfather. Fast forward, I have a beautiful brother from that marriage who's now 35.
Boy.
And life really became what she said: family, home, education. My mother built a business. She was my rock. And the fairy tale unfolded. I married an aspiring politician who to this day is a prominent senator, lawyer, 2-day wedding, the Cinderella dress. My God, life was grand. I got a master's degree in counseling psych. I'm planting flowers. I'm helping people. I thought life couldn't get better. Well, just like with anything else, life threw a curveball, and I unfortunately found myself in a situation where I had to leave the marriage. And I remember the day when I met with my divorce attorney at the time, thinking that I was the most foolish, uneducated, unequipped woman in the world. I didn't know how to read a tax return. I didn't know if we had a mortgage. He had a law practice. What does that mean? Am I entitled to anything? I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was hurt. I felt unloved. I felt rejected. And most importantly, I didn't feel like a team, like a member, like a team member in a marriage and a team. And so I had to go through my divorce. I developed a support system. I went to law school. I got a law degree, and I became a divorce attorney. And I was going along and doing divorce attorney things until I found a pattern in the women that were coming into my Short Hills office. And I saw myself in the mirror time and time again. Educated women, loving marriages, or so they thought, really a nice life. But again, when life threw a curveball, they just didn't know anything. And the question of, will I lose my home? Am I entitled to any support? Am I going to have health insurance? Those questions seem so wrong when I would speak to the male clients that were coming into my office, and they would be like, I got this. I'm good. I got my portfolio. And there was a disconnect. So I launched a platform called Divorce Dynasty, which is equipped with professionals from doctors, lawyers, bankers, therapists, special needs attorneys, even a relationship expert, to help these women build their Rolodex when it has been taken away from them.
Wow. And that's a lot going on there, Carolina. So you're in Short Hills, so that says a lot for the demographics for the most part. Let's talk about the demographics that you're typically serving in that area and how these women who are educated, typically women of affluence, how do they respond to the trauma of this shift in their lives? Sometimes divorce typically comes with some type of abuse, whether it's emotional, financial abuse, physical abuse, but there's usually some breach and breakdown. How are these people responding to the shift and the trauma?
You know, it's almost terrible to say, but just like me, all those years ago, we tend to live in glass bubbles because we, for the most part, have blessed lives. And, you have the home, the loving husband, he goes out, he makes a good living, you have beautiful children. Some of these women obviously have the hardest jobs raising their kids. Some kids have special needs. They have a lot of pressure on them to keep up with these beautiful homes and lives and dinner parties and belonging to the right country clubs and, really being one of those women that the husband wants them to be. When you realize that husband is cheating or that husband is doing something that he shouldn't be doing, or that he gambled the money away, or that he just falls out of love with you and decides to leave, the first instinct is your life crumbles. And these women go through a much harder time emotionally than my clients who I represent that live in, middle America, maybe paycheck to paycheck, but they're doing just fine. They have fine lives. But those women tend to be more involved in the finances. They're out there, working maybe not so glamorous jobs, and they're more in the trenches. I almost want to say that they have a little bit of thicker skin, but I'm not trying to take anything away from the ladies in our neighborhoods. They serve a role that they've so developed so beautifully. And I think that because they have these amazing lives, they don't think about the other shoe dropping.
Mm. And Divorce Dynasty, help me understand, how did you come up with the name for this organization that really does a great job of assembling these great resources for women in need?
So divorce, obviously, because, for quite some time in my career, I only focused on divorce, and we'll get into some other things that I do now. But following Princess Diana's wedding and then setting our footprint in the United States, my mother started watching Dynasty, the series, if you remember, with Linda Evans and Blake Harrington and Joan Collins. And there was a blonde daughter that Joan Collins had called Amanda. And my mother, not that she let me watch the show because I was still too little, but you're going to be Amanda. You're going to be successful. You're going to have a daughter named Amanda. You're going to be Amanda. And I remember this. And when I remember seeing glimpses of the show, it seemed truly like the American dream. The manicured lawns, the perfect dinner manners, the perfectly set table, the 3 generations of Carrington sitting in a room. And to me, Dynasty meant strength and family. And so when divorce and I guess promoting the services, I thought marry divorce with Dynasty, because Dynasty means strength, where divorce could mean that you feel that you're falling apart.
Wow. I like the play on words, though. I have to say, I have a greater appreciation for the name Divorce Dynasty as we've come to talk more about it. Now, we happen to know that you're a family law attorney and matrimonial litigator. You're doing more than divorce. Let's talk about some of the services that you provide for families.
So the Divorce Dynasty platform focuses on death, divorce, and disability, because I find that my clients, female clients who are unequipped with the financial know-how of their families, experience the same issues. I go back to the Cantor Fitzgerald wives of the 9/11 tragedy. Those women were my neighbors in Westfield, New Jersey, and the loving husbands, beautiful marriages, little children, kissed your wife goodbye, honey, see you for dinner, we'll barbecue this weekend. They never came back. And those women didn't know if there was life insurance policies. They may not have had insurance on their mortgages, because a lot of these people just got into huge mortgages in Westfield. There wasn't a lot of planning. They were really busy having babies and having kids and really planning their beautiful lives. They were left lost. And if you remember, those lawsuits took a long time, the payouts on the life insurance policies. So I find that women that lose their spouses, and sometimes heart attack in the middle of the night, and he was the healthiest guy in the world, they are not prepared. The same happens if your husband becomes disabled. You know, Natalie, we live in a world, fast-paced, crazy world, and hopefully that will change post-pandemic. But our successful husbands are out there on the bus, on the train, with the bustle, cars, planes, accidents happen, health happens, issues happen. And if your husband is in a coma, becomes disabled, something goes wrong, and again, you don't have your information, you're again lost. So it's not just divorce. So I provide services to those scenarios and others. Education is at the core of my platform. My 4 pillars are: prepare yourself to protect yourself, partner with the right experts because you can't know everything, and then you will prosper.
Would you say that again, please, Karolina? Karolina, I think that's important, even for someone like myself. There are tools that we need to have. So repeat that for me, please.
It's preparing yourself. And how do we prepare ourselves? I tell my clients to go to Home Depot and buy a fireproof box, then stop at the CVS and get dividers from A to Z. Collect all the documents you have in your home. You do this with your spouse or just alone when you're home. We all have piles of paper everywhere. Put M in the mortgage category, C in the credit card category, L for life insurance. Start assembling the documents. I'm not asking you to understand what they say. I just want you to be able to at least identify them. And then we go through the process of seeing what that means. But so first you prepare. That preparation will give you protection because God forbid something happens. And the first question is, my God, do we have life insurance? Well, now you open up your box and there's your life insurance policy with your agent's name and a code and your password. You have the information. You partner with the right people, get the right banker, the right lawyer, the right insurance person, because you need professionals that are trained to talk about a given topic. You are not a master of all trades, nor do you want to go to one. You want the right person for the job. And then you will prosper because you will at least have a seat at the table and say, you know what, something bad happened, but I feel like I have a good standing point. I have a good place to at least have a conversation.
You know, if nothing else, we're learning through this pandemic period, this COVID-19 period, is it can happen to anyone. There have been so much death and dying around us. Who would expect that? I can tell you, I have a friend who got married on Friday, and her husband passed on Sunday night.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You know, and all she can say is, what do I do now? I don't know anything. And so those are really key points for us to be prepared so we can protect ourselves and partner with the right people so we can prosper. But know the passwords. That is so important.
Natalie, you have no idea. I have so many women coming in and saying, well, I think we have an account here, and I think we have Charles Schwab, and I think it's great that you think, because at least you have some buzzwords. But there's nothing wrong and everything that's right and critical about getting that box together. And I often say to my female women, clients that I meet in different, even in some of the events we do together, and they say, well, my husband, he doesn't want to tell me, he doesn't want to bother me. You have to say, honey, it's not a bother. I would just like to get this together. And most times husbands will say, fabulous, let's have a conversation. Or even if you don't have a will, those documents are necessary to prepare a will, or healthcare proxies, which is so important right now. But if your spouse tends to really get upset that you're asking these questions, you have to go with your gut and really explore that, because if you're an equal partner, then it's only to your benefit that you have all the information.
Such important pointers for us to think about. Let's talk about some of the services that you provide for families in general. When you talked about trusts for children and families with children with disabilities, let's talk about some of those things.
So, yes, a divorce attorney, right? But that's when people don't want to be together anymore. I actually help bring families together. I help keep families together. I help protect their children, generational planning and asset planning. So one of the greatest things that we do as matrimonial lawyers is adoptions. People from all over the world adopt children, and it's just such a beautiful experience to be able to help build families for those that cannot. Certainly, we have same-sex marriages where there's all sorts of, in vitro issues. So we help with understanding that complicated world. Mm-hmm. For people that have children with special needs. And, I think I mentioned to you at another time that I feel like in my area of practice, so many kids have autism, not all severely impacted, but many of them fall on the spectrum. And then we have special needs issues. So we create special needs trusts. So the children have services provided. They don't lose the services. They're not compromised to receive services because potentially the family has wealth. We work closely with our estate planning attorneys, and my firm where I'm a partner, Linda Berry McCormick, has a wonderful estate planning department. But we provide the education to say, obviously, mom and dad, if life is to proceed normally, will not outlive their children. What will happen to your child with special needs when you pass? Who will be the guardian? We deal with guardianship issues. But most importantly, we want to give the families the peace of mind that the services the kids are receiving, whether it's the therapy or educational, that once they pass, it will continue. Because there's nothing more frightening to a parent than saying, my God, if I go, what will happen? Not all special needs children live in residential services. Some of them live at home. The parents are getting older. How does that look when now mom or dad needs support services and they're still caring for their son or daughter? So, that's such an important part of our practice. Obviously, prenuptial agreements. Families with wealth want to protect their wealth. Nobody wants to think that their son or daughter will get divorced, but you need to protect those assets. And I try to make the prenuptial agreement a very pleasant process because you're in love, you're getting married. You don't want lawyers to start bickering. So, we look at it as we're trying to take the issues you're going to fight about off the table. But people obviously need prenuptial agreements. We help couples that live together that are married by drafting cohabitation agreements so that, God forbid, you don't get married or you choose not to, or there's a breakup, that you're not fighting. My goal really is to, through education, promote unity. I'm a big proponent of family. My parents were divorced, I was divorced, but I was able to find love again. And I believe that that's something that we all yearn. And I feel that through my psychology background and my platform, I'm able to always bring it back to that.
That's so important for us to acknowledge and for us to recognize that divorce does not mean, you no longer, you have no heart. So unfortunately, sometimes people grow apart. And there's situations where there's abuse involved. How is that handled? And especially now in this COVID-19 period, when we're quarantined here at home, how are you finding that is having an impact on families that may have already been strained?
I really saw this coming. And on that Saturday, about 7 weeks ago, when Governor Murphy announced the stay-in-place orders, I shot a Facebook video in my office and I said, guys, this is coming. And if you are in the middle of a divorce or in an acrimonious marriage or an acrimonious relationship, or you were thinking about divorce, you need to really take a pause right now. This does not speak to the women that were getting obviously physically beaten, because now the abuser has more of an opportunity to have access to his victim, the wife, and oftentimes he's more stressed, maybe he's drinking more, whatever's going on, you can't leave, you're confined. But for those marriages where there was already a lot of arguing, a lot of insults, a lot of harassment, imagine the stress now. Imagine now losing your job, being furloughed, seeing your account, your retirement account maybe suffer a decline. The kids are getting on your nerves because you're usually, in the city working, and now you're always home together. It was important to first and foremost send a message through the mental health professionals that I work with that this is not the time to hash out that 20 years ago, honey, you wronged me and I'm going to tell you why you wronged me. Not the time. This is the time to try to stay calm. For the families that were experiencing physical domestic violence, I can tell you that unfortunately that is on the rise. I've taken to the different communities, different towns. I've spoken to the mayors. I've posted some of my interviews on Facebook, and the bedroom communities in the affluent towns where they had, for example, 40 phone calls a year in New Providence, which is next door to Short Hills. Mayor Al Morgan said they're getting one a day and it's on the rise. So really it's affecting so many people, but there's a phenomenon, and it's something I also predicted. Women in affluent communities don't tend to call the police as often as women in other socioeconomic communities. I feel that a lot of these women have such pressure on them to keep the families together, to keep the beautiful manicured McMansion together for their kids. They're worried about the private school tuition being paid. They often say to themselves, oh, it's not that bad. And they get through it. What we're seeing is a rise in calls to the social service agencies by those women. And I think that's happening because they lost their girlfriends. They lost their daily activities where they were able to get support from women that they probably call their sisters. And so to not feel so alone and lost, and maybe to even not tell the husband they're reaching out to an agency, because he might say, what are you, crazy? What if that gets out? What are you, a weakling? What are you, they're looking every which way. But isn't that something, Natalie, that in these towns where we think these women are so put together, they're so lost?
Well, it's interesting because when we talked with our Bergen County Sheriff, Sheriff Curtin, a few days ago, one of the things he indicated was that the calls for domestic violence has been down. And it's a big tell that we who are more comfortable in our lifestyles are more ashamed to call out for help. But I'm glad to know that there are services and resources out there, especially in your community as well, that the women can reach out to. And I believe we talked about the local YWCA.
Absolutely. The YWCA and across all the counties. And the wonderful thing about their services is that they recognize that it's not just the bruise healing, that these women really need a continuum of care to get back on their feet. They need services sometimes to food stamps, to proper housing, then to learn to budget. I mean, to getting out of a cycle of abuse is a process. And we as a community and we as women, and we do a lot of philanthropy together, I feel we have an obligation to educate and then bring the right leaders to the table to offer informational sessions such as this.
And I do know you're very philanthropic in your efforts because we happen to cross paths and oftentimes pool our resources in getting things done. I want to talk about something else that you're doing that is very interesting. I think it's quite powerful. I know you founded the Polish American Chamber of Commerce, Northeast of USA. And I want to talk about that and what you're doing with that organization.
So, I am such a proud Polish woman, right? I was born in Poland, raised in Poland for the first years, and I go back. And I really, because of my strong mother, really believe that I have such an obligation to help the women that are from Poland to find their voice within the context of family law. But then I said, that can't be all. That can't be all. There's got to be more to do. I go to Europe all the time. So there's got to be more to do. So for several years, I've been working with the Polish consulate, the Polish embassy, to really look at the relationship between the United States and Poland. Poland is a country that was communist. They worked through their communism. They're now a democratic society. Several years ago, they joined the European Union and received tremendous funding for infrastructure, technology, and the building of businesses. Situated on the border of Germany, on the border of Russia on the other side, we have a sea, we have a thriving port, we have a lot of minerals, a lot of access. We are a country that's ready for business. And what I quickly realized was there was a lot of business opportunity. And selfishly, I wanted to help my female clients. So where it started was when they were getting divorced and would come into some money, they were starting businesses. So I said to myself, develop your tchotchke in New Jersey. Let's get a trademark. Let's get a patent. But let's get you global. The European Union and Poland wants you, Mrs. Smith. They want you in their market. So I'm helping connect women to European dollars to make them global. It grew obviously beyond that. When the trade and investment section of the Polish consulates closed in the US, I quickly aligned with my friend who was running that division, the consul general, to take over that connectivity. So right now we are having live conversations almost daily with companies that are in the US that want to be in Eastern Europe and vice versa. And I think there's no better time to do that. President Trump just signed the visa waiver, so people in Poland can now come to the United States without issue. And it's a time to talk global economy. The pandemic is going to help that because we are now Zooming internationally.
That's right. Wow. So that is something that we can look forward to seeing how it will impact our whole community at a later date. But congratulations on that. I'm excited to learn more. I have to come back to something that it's the big elephant in the room. It's COVID-19. We have freely given up so many of our liberties for health and safety. And here we are living in the US. What is your take on how we will proceed as a people post-COVID-19 and what's happening with our legal system? How are we coping with this?
One of the first things that started happening, which lawyers had to address, and I have spoken about this on my weekly Zoom interviews with various politicians, mayors, and other experts in the field of family law and domestic violence. we have constitutional rights. We obviously enjoy them very much, and we love this country so much because we are afforded all those liberties. But this is a war. It's a bio war. It may not be World War II, it may not be World War I. We have to entrust the fact that we have a government, federal government, state government, local government, that has an obligation and, quite frankly, needs to protect its people. And although at times we feel that we have the freedom of speech and the freedom to bear arms and the freedom to practice our religion, we cannot be selfish and think about just our own neo-fencing. We have to think about how that's going to impact our neighborhood. We are seeing on television that different communities, different religions are going out there and just not abiding by the stay in place orders, not abiding by the restrictions, failing to realize that the longer that that goes on, the more shut in we will be. So I say to my clients two things. You heard courts were closed. Courts are not closed, they're open. But of course, they're working on a skeletal crew, as is everyone, for the safety of the workers. Emergent applications are being heard. Domestic violence issues are being heard. Other issues that aren't as emergent, well, they're going to have to wait. But the courts are still open. 911 never stops working. And we will, I think, as a people become stronger, and I think have a civic lesson as this goes on to better understand our governments, to better understand what our sheriff that you had on can do, what our mayors can do. There's a lot going on in the news right now with the battle between federal government and state government. I encourage everyone to listen and learn, go back to the high school days of civil procedure and current events. We have an obligation as American citizens to take part in our government. And this should encourage everyone to go out there and vote who didn't vote, learn more, and really become more in tune, because it's easy to say, I should be able to go out there and riot. But then think about what that rioting will do for the neighborhood. It's okay to be heard, maybe do it in this forum by doing a Zoom. We have to be very conscious of how we react to the pandemic.
Very appropriately said. Karolina, excuse me. What is one of the things you want us to take away from today's conversation? We know your platform is that of Divorce Dynasty. How can we reach out to you, God forbid, someone who is in need and needs guidance? And it may simply be in family law. It may be a family at home with an autistic child or special needs child that just doesn't know what to do because the routine has been broken.
Absolutely. And the routines being broken for kids with special needs is leading to a lot of fights in the home because the kids act out and the parents are fighting. So that's just another trigger. But during this time of the pandemic, I've offered my cell phone because I know that sometimes a phone call to a lawyer is just what you need to calm down. 973-309-4473 is my phone number. Anybody that Googles me will be able to reach me. I do a lot of things on social media, so I am accessible. But the message that I want to send to everybody is that if you don't have education and if you don't take the time to educate yourself, you're going to make foolish decisions. Divorce is certainly not always the answer. It's probably the last thing many people need. You need to educate yourself on yourself, your well-being, emotionally, what's going on in your family, your assets. Sometimes there are triggers that could be easily addressed. So no matter what you are doing in life, always align yourself with the right people that have the information so you could make informed decisions. Knee-jerk reactions are not a way to live a well-lived life. So I have made it my passion and my foundation of my career to connect people that know what they're talking about. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I know how to identify the issues, and I try to put into my network those that have the answers.
And one of the people you mentioned in your network were the relationship experts for the divorcees. Here we are, it's post-COVID. In a little while, this weekend, the golf courses and the parks will reopen with social distancing being practiced. What do you foresee for your divorcee clients and dating or starting new relationships?
Well, that's one of the questions I'm getting every day. Karolina, how am I going to meet a man? You know what? It's going to be different. And their concerns are that anybody could put it, like you can wear your underwear, no underwear, put on a really nice jacket, right? Or a nice shirt and impress your lady and be the perfect gentleman on a Zoom call. It's going to be different. But I think that the upside of this is going to be that people are going to spend more time talking, because if you want to see each other, you can't text. You're going to have to do Facebook Live or live on your phone, or you're going to be talking. The art of conversation, in my opinion, has been lost. And maybe you and I talk more because we're in these philanthropic circles and people do communicate. But I'm going to tell you, people don't talk anymore with the emojis, with the shortcuts. I think this will lead to letter writing. I think this will lead to better manners. I think it will lead to better communication. And I think that people are going to really balance which relationships they value. And the circles are going to get a little bit smaller, because you're going to realize that in our lifetime, we have seen that life could change at the drop of a dime.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Our guest is Karolina Dehnhard, attorney at law, family law, and matrimonial litigator. And I have to tell you, this has been one eye-opening conversation. We're so delighted you were able to join us. Quaran-Tea, ladies and gentlemen, with The Whole Woman. And tomorrow's guest will be Tevra Francis of Bergen and Color. I'm Natalie McKenzie, The Whole Woman, and I wish you enough life to live, enough joy to share, enough love to give. I wish you enough. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Karolina.